Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm so excited about tonight's show. So many of you, are following us on TikTok. And if you are, you know that, he's made quite a splash on TikTok. And he's coming to us, from Brooklyn tonight, but he's from London. And he has been a housing advocate, a housing hero for the past 2 years now. And he's joining us live, but he has such an incredible personal story and why he's fighting for the thousands of people who are suffering in Great Britain right now in public housing. We want to talk about comparisons. We want to talk to him about what it's all like and what are the solutions. But first, this.
Monica Makes It Happen is sponsored by London Disability, dedicated to helping the disabled get Social Security benefits.
Kwejo Twanaboya is joining us live. I'm so excited. I'm such a fan of yours. I just want you to know I did not do TikTok until I met you. You are so inspiring. Almost 1 million views. Why do you think you've struck such a chord with people?
I think in regards to my work, and I've been like this from the very beginning, I don't try to sugarcoat anything with it. I want people to see the reality of what people are having to go through behind closed doors. So that's always been the aim with my work. And whenever I do highlight a video, I try to make it as clear and as blunt as possible. And it's absolutely just as horrific, if not worse, in person than some of the stuff that I share on social media.
It's so true. You have to see it in person. And you have said, we're looking at video actually right now in the Bronx.
Yeah.
I remember being in that apartment, and it is outrageous that it's been happening for so many decades. But you say, you know, being in New York, we met you in Astoria just this week, but you're in Brooklyn tonight. You say that the public housing here, right here in the United States. Remember, people, please comment, ask him a question live. He's here with us right now, listening to you, and we're listening to the comments. You say it's worse.
Yes, I mean, what makes it worse here, there's similar issues in terms of the disrepair that people are living with, whether it's damp, mold, rats, mice, collapsed ceilings, leaks, homes being flooded with sewage. Is very similar to what happens in the UK. The difference here is the vast levels of inequality that I've noticed, and the way in which tenants are almost treated with such disdain or blamed for the situations that they're in. And I think that's the difference between here and London. People understand the issue a lot more in the UK now because of my posts on social media, whereas here it's all very, very new. But there's a stigma with public housing and people that live in public housing that really needs to be changing, because ultimately people are paying for a service they are not receiving. That's the problem here.
Yeah, they're paying the rent, and sometimes these are high rents that we're talking about. Rita wants to say hello, and she says tenants are the ones who can really tell you what's going on. They're the ones we should get their voices, right? And Jesse Frog says, how can the city take care of all the buildings of tenants? They need to start privatizing some, because currently the NYC system is way too large. We do have almost 500,000 people living in public housing, the size of Miami, the population of Miami. So it is 320 developments and $40 billion needed. I mean, what do you think is a possible solution? I mean, I love that we're kind of meeting our minds together here, because I feel like the solution comes from good conversation, but also action. And you've been getting action.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think I'm glad you've mentioned that, and I'm glad that individual asked the question in regards of privatizing public homes and NYC homes. And I would disagree with that, only because of how far it's come in the UK. I mean, in the UK, over 4 million people live in public housing. Now, public housing, we have to look at it as something that is positive. And it is a positive thing to have public housing, because it acts as a safety net for society and people in New York City. Because if we saw a situation that nearly happened in London, where rent prices were hiked massively and people couldn't afford their rent, people that can currently afford their rent may not any longer be able to pay for their rent. And if that happens and they end up getting evicted by their landlords, they have to turn to public housing and they have to turn to the state. If that's not there, then we're going to have a huge problem trying to have to rehouse people. Public housing is there and should be there to look after some of the most vulnerable people in our society. And that's how we should be looking at it. And we should be treating it as a positive. The reason it's fallen to the levels that it has is because of underinvestment. It's because of the negative stereotype that it's carried for absolute decades. And also, it's because it's not seen as a priority by politicians that don't live in public housing.
And it's exactly playing right into what Ramona's saying, who's watching us. They should hire district leaders to overlook all paperwork. This paperwork must be signed off by the tenant. I like that. Housing office of the development the tenant lives in. And of course, E.M. Roman says their site isn't working. You always have to call and they really don't care. And well, Roman's over it. We're over it too, because we've been covering this for years. But I have to say, did you say 4 million people live in public housing?
Over 4 million live in social housing across the UK. Yeah, and it works similar but different to how it does out here in New York City, and it really is a positive. But Roman hit the nail on the head there when he mentioned, and the same thing happens in the UK when tenants are phoning up and they're treated with such disdain over the phone. I think it's an issue with attitude towards public housing tenants. Yeah. And that's something fundamentally that needs to change, because that is the foundation that things can be built on an improvement. But if you can't even pick up the phone and make a complaint without being disrespected on the phone, it shows the attitude right from the bottom up to the top. Because, I mean, these sort of influences, let's say, come from top down. And these attitudes come from top down. So they clearly need to change.
Can we talk about you and why you're so passionate? Your story is something we left out, which pointed out to me. And talk to me. Why are you so passionate about this?
Oh, honestly, the reason I'm here is because I've experienced it. I've lived in poor social housing. I still live in social housing back in the UK, and my home was falling to bits. We were put in a converted car garage that was filled with damp and mold and ants. And then we was moved into another property with my dad and my sisters. And that had issues like mice, cockroaches, damp, mold, missing ceilings, asbestos, poor security, a bathroom that couldn't even be used. We were having to shower in the gym, a kitchen that was nearly 100 years old and infested with wood lice. And my dad was diagnosed with stage 1 esophageal cancer whilst we was going through all of this. And we were very naive in the fact that we thought he would get better. We didn't realize how aggressive the cancer was. That then progressed to stage 4, and he went around from walking, going about his business, being independent, to being fed through his stomach 3 times a day by district nurses because he couldn't even swallow his own saliva, bedbound. Meanwhile, he was in this sort of environment with cockroaches, with rats, with mice, and all these other issues that are described. And he died as a result of that in early 2020, and things went from bad to worse. We just were not being listened to by our provider, and I had to turn to shaming them in order to get a response. Now I travel the whole of the UK, and now I'm out here in New York to do exactly the same, because tenants deserve to be treated like human beings, and they should not be living in what can only be described as slum housing.
And you are an action hero. You take action, which I love.
Thank you.
Not talk. You are, and I can tell it comes from this place. And this story I'm sure all of our viewers, please send love. We love to you and prayers to you and to, of course, your family. But I want to also talk about how people can relate to that. They're sick and they're trying to heal in public housing. You know, a lot of, we just talked to someone who had surgery. We talked to a 95-year-old who didn't have heat. Take a look.
Great to see you. Come on in.
How cold are you?
Oh, don't even get me started.
81-year-old Betty Simmons says when she sits in her living room on her couch, she has to wear her gloves and winter hat. It's that cold.
This is how I have to dress in order to sit in my apartment.
Under the blankets.
Under the blankets.
Simmons called Pix 11 News to bring the heat. There's no heat. She's not only fighting for herself, but her freezing neighbors here at the Thurgood Marshall Plaza in Washington Heights.
Do you have nothing?
No. Just across the hallway, we found 95-year-old Carmen Perez. How do you feel about it?
It's too cold.
Simmons says every winter it's a battle to feel the heat. As the tenant president here, she's angry and tired of complaining.
Pipes bust in their apartments.
Back in December, Simmons took this picture on Christmas Eve after a pipe burst, flooding several apartments.
Running down that staircase with the cold, that's what's the result.
There's 180 apartments here. What was once a NYC building is now under private management. And a NYCHA spokesperson tells us, quote, this location converted to PAC last month, and the development team is now working to deliver transformative repairs through the program. NYCHA and the management team will continue to work together to address heating concerns for Marshall residents. We'll be back to make.
And my producer says Punxsutawney Phil, says there's 6 more weeks of winter. So we are in for it, and we're continuing to bring the heat. So if you have a heat complaint, tell me right now live as we're talking to our rock star, superstar housing advocate from London. You live in London right now, but he's in Brooklyn tonight, which we're so excited about. Thanks for why did you visit New York City? Were you just curious, or you're visiting? I know you're visiting some family, but you're on a mission.
Yeah, so I came out here. I've never been to the US before. This is the first time, and you know what? I absolutely love it out here in New York. I really, really do. It does have its problems, obviously. That's why I'm here speaking to you today about housing. But I had people reach out whilst I was in the UK last year, and they were saying, they had seen my work and said, please come to New York. We're having issues out here similar to what it is that you're highlighting in the UK. We need help. It's really, really bad. And I knew I wanted to come out here to visit family anyway. And then I was so tempted being out here because of the nature of my work back in the UK. I had to speak to people. I had to try and raise it as an issue. And that last clip that we just saw of the tenants who had their homes flooded and also without heat during winter, we're having the exact same issues. There's tenants reaching out to me whilst they've been out here in New York, having the same issues back home. And like you said, another 6 weeks of winter that they're going to have to be going through this. People go without heat for weeks, if not months. It gets to a point where we're like, at what point do we say enough is enough and a line needs to be drawn? Because when you compare the way people are living in public housing, and then you compare that with the chief executives, the directors, their life, and also how much they're earning, I think it becomes a moral issue, because you're allowing elderly people to go without heat and hot water in their homes, vulnerable individuals who are recovering illnesses,
and I don't know if
they're complaining time and time again.
I don't know if you can see, but my producers are actually playing some of the video that you have posted on TikTok. And some of these videos, I mean, we've seen it all here in New York City, but right now we're looking at cockroaches. And can we talk a little bit about that? I hate to interrupt, but it is such a hot topic here in New York City, rodents. And tell me, you have a different kind of problem there. You call them mice. That makes it sound cuter, but it's so not cute.
No, I mean, we do have rats. It's not like on the scale that I've seen out here in New York. I mean, I knew rats were big. I didn't know about the size of a cat, though. So when I came out here and I've seen them, even I was a bit like, wow. But in the UK, we have a lot of mice and mice infestations. I've lived in homes where I've had mice and cockroaches. Cockroaches is another big issue in the UK, but people are unaware of it. When I've highlighted it, some people have turned around and said, I didn't even know we had cockroaches here, but it's very, very prevalent, especially in public housing, and it's very hard to deal with.
There's one coming out of the stove right there. I don't know if you can see it, but we're playing one they're coming out of the stove. And I have to say, Gloria has a question. She's watching. The city is understaffed here. They don't have enough caretakers for developments. Same in London?
Well, yes, they say that, and they say it's like massively understaffed. But I always see it as a thing where when they say they're understaffed or they don't have enough finances, I always go back to the point, well, you're here to provide decent and safe homes. That should be the basis for everything. If you don't have enough staff, you don't have enough finances, then you need to be not directing it elsewhere, but investing in what really matters. And that should be looking after the health and safety of your tenants. And if it's a staffing issue, let's be real. This is New York and it's London, two of the most richest cities in the world. They have the finances if they wanted to really invest, but they unfortunately haven't seen it as a priority. And you can just look at the way in which the New York Police Department's invested in and how heavily invested that is compared to housing. I mean, we do have the finance, we do have the money, but it's about priorities. And unfortunately, bad housing doesn't seem like it's been a priority here in New York for a very, very long time. And it really needs to be, because it's costing people's lives.
Well, a lot of people are connecting to your story and just love you. Final thoughts.
Thank
1
you.
minute left. I know you have a goal in mind. Again, right now you're independent.
Yes.
You're on TV stations all the
Yes.
time. You're on Pix. You're regular now. You're going to be on Pix 11. But you have a goal in mind. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so it wasn't always my goal, I'll be honest. And from my background, I never thought it would be a possibility or something that I wanted to go into. But since being able to create this change, I've thought to myself, and I've become more tempted with the idea of going into politics at home in the UK, whether that be becoming an MP and sitting in Parliament, or the Mayor of London, potentially. Who knows? Never say never.
You said it here, the Mayor of London. We might be talking to the next Mayor of London. And you want to speak to Mayor Adams.
Yes.
You want to speak to the New York City Mayor.
Yes, definitely. I think this issue of poor housing needs to be on the political agenda. I think it needs to be dealt with. It needs to be focused on. Enough is enough of this negative stereotype of public housing and the need to privatise it. What it needs is investment and to be looked after decades of neglect. And I really do want to speak to the Mayor of New York at some point to discuss this. I'm happy to give advice on behalf of what I've done over in the UK for the last 2 years. I mean, it's sat at government level at the moment in the UK. But ultimately, it needs to change for the tenants, because not even one individual should be living in the conditions that you highlight or I highlight. And until that happens, then pressure really does need to be applied, and we need to get our priorities straight.
Thank you, Kwejo. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is the start of many. I hope we stay in touch.
Definitely.
Thanks to Zoom, we can always stay in touch. You'll be back on our show and telling us about what you're working on. And it's amazing how this is an international problem. Housing is an international problem. And it is a human right. It's a human right. And New York City, you know, we're always fighting for you right here. Wherever you are, you know what to do. You know how to reach out to us. Now we have our new TikTok. I've started doing our TikTok. Let me know what you think of my new page. And again, we're making it happen at 4, 5, 6, and 10. Always fighting for you. Reach out to us. We're making it happen. Good night.